whimsical linguistic objects. Elf machines.
Greetings from Cyberdelic Space. This is Lorenzo, and I'm your host here in the Psychedelic Salon. Today I'm going to play a recording that I made last week during our live Monday night salon, and our guests were Levi Barker and Gary West, who called in from the Iboga Wellness Center in Costa Rica. Now, Levi Barker is a trained Iboga provider in the Misoka Bwiti tradition and was trained to serve the medicine by a 10th generation Bwiti shaman, while the Iboga Wellness Center was founded by Gary West, and it is the longest-running shamanic Iboga retreat center in the Western Hemisphere. One of the topics that we discussed concerned the different ways in which the plant Iboga is used in spiritual healing when compared with ways in which Ibogaine, which is one of 11 active alkaloids in Iboga, ways in which it is used to heal opioid and other addictions. Now, while you most likely knew this already, well, for me this was the first time that I clearly understood the difference between the uses of the Iboga plant itself and Ibogaine. But rather than have me tell you some more about our conversation, why don't I just begin playing it? Tonight, we as everybody knows, we've got Gary Cook and Levi Barker here with us, and they are here coming to us from the Iboga Wellness Center in Costa Rica. And I'll tell you the truth, I know not too much about the Wellness Center other than what I've been able to read on the web. And so I was going to start out with maybe Levi and Gary telling us a little bit about how they came to be living in Costa Rica at a Iboga Wellness Center. And I don't mean to, what I want you guys to know is I try to keep it kind of lighthearted here too. We talk about kind of heavy topics, but I'm always kind of lighthearted. And so this is in the form of a joke. I don't mean to insult you, but I noticed from the two of you don't look like either of you were born in Gabon. And the reason I mention that is I've been getting a lot of people, we've been getting a lot of flack from women lately that there are, everybody's speaking are old white men. And so actually I decided to retire. I'm not going to go to festivals or conferences anymore. But I'm wondering, how are you all, before we get into how you got there, how are you all received by the Bwiti people in Gabon as far as the work that you're doing? Go ahead, Levi.
You want to go ahead, Gary?
Yeah, go, Levi.
Okay. No, they're, accepted very, very well, in the tradition, in the Bwiti tradition, at least our part of it, which is called Misoka Bwiti. We really look at everybody just as brothers and sisters, and no separation on your skin color. The only requirement is, you're coming for the love of Iboga and to use it as a tool to improve your life. So no, whenever we go to Gabon, we can hardly even lift a finger. They really value us as guests and just appreciate us coming, and think it's really cool that we're there and we want to do the same thing that they do. And we love them and they love us.
That's really wonderful to hear, and gladdens my heart, actually. In fact, that reading a little bit of very brief bios that you have on your website, it seems like both of you kind of come from the same backgrounds that we all are coming from. We were all seeking something, and some of us have had difficult lives up till now and off and on. And it sounds like that kind of what happened to the two of you. So why don't you kind of take turns in telling us how you got down to Costa Rica doing the work that you're doing?
Well, Gary started it also. Yeah, you go for it, Gary.
Go ahead, Gary.
For a number of years, I've been interested in spirituality and who I am, why I'm here, things like that. And I was interested in shamanism as well, and started experimenting with ayahuasca and San Pedro.
Now, how long ago was this, Gary?
It's about 10 years ago.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Uh,
I assume you were living in the United States then?
yes. Yep.
Okay.
In Massachusetts. Mhm.
Okay.
Um, so anyway, I have two sons, wonderful men. But my older son kind of in his late teens took a dark path and ended up an opiate addict. So about 15 years into it, he came to my wife and I explaining just how worried he was, and that he was not doing well and didn't know what to do. So because of my background in shamanism and wanting to see healing occur both physically and spiritually, we chose to come here to Costa Rica to a place called Iboga House.
Now this is before you had even tried Iboga yourself?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. But you had used ayahuasca?
Yes, I had used ayahuasca 5 times and San Pedro 3 times. So, I came with my son to support him through the process, but I also came for myself. I'm a seeker as well, and never really could get it satisfied, that seeking within me, until I found Iboga. And then all my answers came, and it was really quite remarkable to have that happen for me, and also to watch my son transform in like a week from a serious
addict. That rapidly?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And this is like after 15 years of an addiction?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
Yeah. Right. But we think, the magic ingredient is actually the will. How much do you want it? And you can put that together with Iboga, and you've got success, basically. But it won't go against someone's will. If you don't want it, it's not going to do anything.
Gary, I'm really, really pleased that you brought that out, because I've had some experiences myself with various people that I was close to that I really wanted to help, but they were not ready, and at least not ready to listen to anything I had to say. And so I understand what you're saying, that while this can be a pathway or a doorway to better mental health, you've got to ask for it first. Correct.
And ask for it, and sincerely want to change.
Right.
Sincerely, listen to what the medicine has to show you about how you can change, but then acting on it.
Well, tell us a little bit about this. Your first time down there with your son. What took place? How long were you there, and how many ceremonies, if any, did you have,
right,
et cetera?
Okay, we were there for 11 days. So immediately when my son arrived, like he had taken his last dope about as we got on the plane in Atlanta, come down to Costa Rica. And so by the time we got there, he was starting to go into withdrawal. And so my teacher, Magenda, who was the shaman working there, immediately gave him some Iboga. And it took about 5 days of constantly feeding him Iboga to get him through it. And then another couple of days just kind of wind down and integrate a little bit. But I was just so impressed. My teacher, he stayed up with my son for 5 nights in a row.
And so your son actually consumed Iboga for 5 days in a row.
Yeah. Oh,
wow.
Yeah, because what I've seen with working with opiate addiction and things is that it's almost like an acid and base reaction. They both have potential, but you mix them together and they neutralize each other. So what we see with Iboga is someone comes in with opiates in their system, the Iboga will start to work on that, and it'll, dissolve some of that from inside. Give them some more Iboga, dissolves more, and then eventually the withdrawals are gone, and the physical aspect of the healing is pretty much complete.
How did you find this shaman in the first place?
Online, just searching around and looking for all of our options. We were first looking at ibogaine places, but that didn't appeal to me because I didn't see the spiritual healing part.
And this would be a good place to explain the difference between iboga and ibogaine treatments?
Yeah. Well, iboga is a plant that naturally grows over in the countries of Gabon, Cameroon, the Congo, and
Now,
it grows there. And the people there have been working with it for a long time, and they discovered the wonderful properties of it, and really created a whole culture around it. That they're more recently willing to share that with outsiders.
Now, is it mainly the Bwiti tribe in Gabon, or do other people in Gabon participate with iboga ceremonies?
Yeah, it's probably probably best understood not to think of it so much as a tribe, but an approach to life. To myself, I've been over there and met a lot of Bwiti, and it basically means someone that's willing to use iboga to find answers, to study life.
So it's not like an individual tribe or community in Gabon. It's spread diverse throughout the country.
Yes, and there's various sects, and people do their ceremonies a little bit different, whatever. But the group that we're with are called the Masoko Bwiti, and are primarily focused on healing.
Mm-hmm. Now, do they, when you say they focus on healing, what in their society are they, victims of stress and some of the same things that we have here in North America, or do they have different kinds of, say, mental anguish that they go through?
I didn't see a lot of stress when I was there. I've been over there 3 times, and people are pretty relaxed and get along well.
I guess my question is the healing that they were doing. What type of healing? What reasons for the healing were they using iboga?
From what I understand, a lot of physical healing, emotional healing, spiritual healing, ancestral healing.
So really very similar to the work that ayahuasqueros do in South America.
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. And now the center where you are now, is that the place that you and your son went?
No.
Oh, okay.
So we went there a little over 7 years ago, and we both were just blown away by the whole experience and decided to train to become providers. And we both studied with the shaman there. And it was in the beginning of 2014 that I started Iboga Wellness Center.
Okay. Now, is your son still involved with you?
Well, not as much as I'd like. He's been 6 years clean off heroin now, and that's
really the main question I wanted to ask.
Okay, yeah, no, he won't go near it, and I'm not worried that he ever would. While he was still an addict, he got bit by a tick and got Lyme disease. And it didn't show up in his life until 3 or 4 years later.
Wow.
So he he got clean off heroin. He trained to be a provider. He was really had a daughter, and just life couldn't have been better for him. And then the Lyme disease hit him, and it just hit him hard. And it was crushing to watch, but he's coming around.
Yeah, that's a real hard thing to deal with. I've had several relatives involved in it too. So, well, listen, Hey, Levi, we haven't had a chance to hear from you, and you're the one that kicked this whole thing off. So, do you want to step in here now a little bit?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sure. Oh, with where I got into Iboga. So so many people, I was also one to find Iboga from opiates. So it's been close to 11 years ago now that I was, some points in my life I was okay in managing. Other times I was at absolute rock bottom and just using any opiates I could get, and, tried the methadone, maintenance, Suboxone, tried it all. And at one point, I asked a friend who's really into plant medicine and really knows a lot. Probably the person that I know that knows the most about plants. I asked him if there was anything that would help from it for opiate, and he said, "Yeah, iboga." And I remember the first time I heard that word, that I was like, "Wow, that sounds very serious." And I knew there was something there. And so he actually said, "And I have some, and I'll send it to you." And so he did. I was living in Nicaragua at the time, and so I had I was in the first year of my relationship with my now wife, who's Costa Rican and Nicaraguan. And at the time, the Spanish wasn't so good. I used to carry around a little handheld translator down there, and so I explained a bit of what was going on, so she got a okay idea, but still wasn't quite sure. You just don't see opiate problems much in Latin America. Maybe in Mexico or Colombia, there's some of that in the cities, but in at least in Central America, there you just don't see problems with opiates. And so let her know that I would be going through this experience. It'll probably take a couple nights, and I may need help to the bathroom. And so looking back, I was pretty brave, but I was at the point where I was willing to do whatever it took to stop abusing myself. And so I asked my friend, "So what do I do?" And he had sent me quite a bit of iboga. He said, "Just down it and then lay down and try not to move your head." So that was my only instructions. And so I did that.
Know how much you had?
No, I do. I did. I can say I didn't make my way the whole way through it. That's for sure. There was plenty left over. Okay. And anyways, so I did that, and it was a pretty grueling 3 nights. Like Gary was saying, his son went about 5 nights without sleeping. I went 3 nights, and that's pretty typical for people with withdrawing like that. And it worked. It got me physically clean, where I felt good afterwards and was, didn't feel the need to go back. But at the same time, us opiate addicts, we really mask a lot of our emotions. So all of a sudden I'm having these emotions that, I was running from for all those years. And so that's, got past the big wall, but the work really started there. And about 1.5 years later, that same friend went to the spot called Iboga House, where Gary was talking about, where we met our teacher. He went there, and Magenda, our teacher, was just serving root bark at the time, and my friend, who's also a chemist, said, "Hey, it would be good for some of these people, especially people that are withdrawing, to make a total alkaloid extract just using vinegar." And so Magenda was into the idea, and I was living in Nicaragua, so my friend went back down to show him how to do it and invited me down just to help out. So I was there, grinding herbs all day, and stirring stuff, and just helping them out. And so I got to know our teacher, and then started coming down to do some ceremonies with him. And I got through a few of those, and I was doing internet marketing at the time, so I started doing some marketing for the site. He was just getting rolling. It wasn't real big for him yet, and so in about 1 year after that, after getting a bit of marketing, the spot certainly did get popular, and I heard about him training some different people. And when I heard that, I had known from the first time I had the medicine that, like Gary was saying, it was just so magical that I wanted to work with it. And so when I heard about the training, I asked him, and surprisingly at the time where I was in my life, he said yes. And so I went and trained with him over several years, for 3 weeks at a time. Here or there, I was still running a business, so I wasn't all the way in. And then about 4 years ago, I had known for all these last 10 and a half years or so that I wanted to work with the medicine, but it just wasn't right or ready. And about 4 years ago, I got a very clear call where my whole life started shifting in that direction without me even consciously happening. I was just getting pushed in that direction. And so I had known Gary. We had become friends from the Iboga House, and got in touch with him. And he was just getting the wellness center was just starting to do well, and they needed some extra help. And I was fortunate enough to get in at the right time and start doing more ceremonies with them. And that's when Gary's son Jeff was there, and just beautiful work. And it's been the best decision I've ever made in my life, and really helping.
You eventually did go to Gabon to train too. Is that right?
Yep, definitely went to Gabon a couple of times now. It was really cool to see our teacher in action. The system that we use was developed by him, which works really well for Westerners. It's a melding of, the Bwiti tradition and some shamanic aspects of that, but then also, helping people get through the Western problems that we have to deal with. Like you were mentioning, we're just more stressed, more anxiety, probably a lot harder on ourselves. And so, he developed that system, and yep, definitely, when you go over there, and you're, training or a provider at the time, yeah, it's pretty intense, and he's showing you a lot of really valuable stuff.
Levi, and you may don't want to answer this, but the reason I'm asking is a good significant portion of our listeners here in the salon are under 35, but there are some old guys like myself. And one of the questions I have, because I know how it could happen to me, but how difficult or how easy is it to slip into an opioid addiction? How does that take place? If some of the parents and grandparents listening right now, what do they need to be aware of, that why someone would start slipping into a serious addiction?
Yeah. Oh man. It's so rampant these days. And I kind of caught it right when, the first wave of all these opiate addictions came up, and like so many people, I had broke my wrist snowboarding, and I had to did a surgery on it, and got prescribed Lortab, and, started taking that and started enjoying the feeling, to where I was, physically good with my wrist, but still wanted to have that feeling. And so, yeah, really the prescriptions are a big culprit in a lot of it. Hardly anybody I know would go straight to heroin. So many people come through the prescription drugs, and, then they can't get them, or, their doctor cuts them off. And, that's when you turn to, the street opiates. And, I would imagine, a very large portion of people start that way. So, if somebody's having a major surgery where they're like really, really in pain, which I was, maybe you use them for, 2, 3, 4 days. But then I would really watch, any further use of the painkillers, and then just, once you're through that point, I would dump them out, and yeah, get them out of the house. That's for sure. What happens is people, going through something physical where they need that, and it gives them relief, but then they also start noticing, like, the emotions from the surgery are dulled down. Maybe you're not being as, maybe you're not as stressed as you thought you would be because you're out of work and out of commission, and people start realizing that there's an escape there. And so, it doesn't take long to learn to use that as a mask for other things going on in your life. So, it's definitely something to be really, really careful for.
I can see how that would have could have easily happened to me, because I'm one of those people who, if I'm taking something and I say it makes me feel good, I want to keep doing it. But, over the years, I've learned to temper myself somewhat. But, back when in the 60s, when I was in the Navy, I ruptured, my appendix ruptured, and it was quite painful, and the surgery was long, and they didn't even stitch me up. There's a lot of complications. Wow. But I never got any pain medicine other than what came through an IV drip. They never gave me any pills or anything. And 2 days after I got out of the hospital, they put me on a plane and flew me to Vietnam to catch my ship. So I didn't have the luxury of getting addicted to something. But I'll tell you what, I know enough about myself that if I had been given opioids, which they weren't really given back then, I can see how easily I could get sucked into something like that. It's not just addictive personalities. Those things are very seductive. And I've been fortunate in that I never liked opium. I've smoked opium and various forms of it and all. Never tried heroin, but the opioids never attracted me like psychedelics do. So I was fortunate in that regard. But that said, I can see also how it'd be really easy for somebody like me to slip into that habit.
Yep. And one thing for the listeners to understand is, Iboga or Ibogaine really, got its name off of being the only thing in the world that can help people get through opiate withdrawal, in a painless fashion, or not painless, but, it really does cut out at least 95% of what somebody's going through. But this medicine is really for anything we're struggling with in life, or the direction we're looking for. Like currently at Iboga Wellness, we're just not set up for it. And especially with the synthetic opiates, we don't actually treat people going through a detox anymore. What we do recommend is them going to an Ibogaine clinic and then coming to CS. So, everybody that we get currently is clean from drugs. So we certainly get some people that have, 2 weeks, a month clean, but most people are really coming, for depression and anxiety, PTSD, past abuse of some sort. A lot of people that are just really hard on themselves and can't break that cycle. People looking for their next direction in life. So this medicine is really for everybody. If you're feeling stuck and looking for some directions, and what we tell people is those answers are already inside of us. They're there, but through different experiences, we start creating this filter on top of connecting with ourselves. And, the medicine is able to break through that and just really connect yourself with yourself again and bring to light, how life is going for oneself. And so, yeah, it really is for everybody.
This would be a good point to once more explain the difference between Iboga and Ibogaine, because like many, many people until recently, the last year or so, and learning more about the two substances, I confuse the two and I use the term wrong. And you're talking about Ibogaine clinics to help people get off a particularly heroin addiction, and I know several people who have successfully done that with Ibogaine. But you are an Iboga center, which is more, to me, seems spiritual and psychological. Do you want to distinguish between the two a little bit more?
Sure. So I can definitely understand why the Ibogaine clinics use Ibogaine. It's
and explain what Ibogaine, the difference between Iboga and Ibogaine.
Yes. So Iboga, I think, has 13 alkaloids, and Ibogaine being one of them. And so, I think a French pharmacologist was able to extract it, in the early 1900s or late 1800s, and didn't get much attention until Howard Lotsof. And so with the Ibogaine, it works really, really well for opiate detox and even other drug detoxes. But it is just the one alkaloid. I think it moves through an addict's system easier physically, whereas with Iboga, I feel you get a deeper physical cleanse with the other alkaloids doing their work. And I will say, so I've never had ibogaine. So I'm, speaking on what I feel and what I do know about ibogaine. And with ibogaine, they can get a lot more exact on the dosing that they're giving a person. So at ibogaine clinic, people will be dosed based on their so many milligrams of ibogaine per kilogram of body weight. And so here we know that everybody has a different tolerance to the medicine, so everybody gets a bit different dose depending on how they're reacting to the medicine, and we can connect with them and see where they're at after a certain amount of time. So, and the thing is, the iboga is a plant, and so in our tradition or many traditions, we know that plants, they have a spirit to them, and they have codes inside of them, codes to nature, and obviously nature has a really high intelligence so high that we can't explain everything. And so with the full plant of iboga, I feel like you're accessing that on a deeper level. And then one with the tradition, the iboga is the medicine of the bleeding, and that's, besides my first time doing a detox, that's really all I've ever known about this medicine. So really the iboga and the bleeding for me really go hand in hand, and I can't really see them being separated. Now that's not to say that, a person can get everything they need from ibogaine. I'm sure they could. It's just a different path to get there. And,
that of course I'm a big believer in the complete plant for medicine, and I think that just even on a purely scientific basis, the synergy of those 11 alkaloids, there's certainly got to be some effects, that the synergistic effects that they have as well. So I'm a real believer in the full plant, although I do appreciate the fact that I've known a number of people who have had a serious heroin addiction that have been essentially I don't know if you want to say cured, but they haven't used heroin in a decade. So I can see the benefit of it more than just say pure THC taking out of cannabis, because I think the synergistic effect of the cannabis plant, not to mention the spirit of the cannabis plant, has a great deal of benefit. But this is really fascinating to see that here is a medicine that's being used in two different ways, healing two different really kind of aspects, and it's one of the first times I've seen where the pharmaceutical end, the extraction of a single alkaloid, has really been as beneficial as this has.
Absolutely. That's a great analogy with the cannabis and THC as well.
So do any of our other fellow gatherers here, there's a few dozen of us here, anybody want to raise your hand and join in?
Lorenzo, based on just something that you just said, what are your thoughts on LSD? Because that's just an isolated molecule. Do you feel that there's a spirit in there? I think you've used LSD a number of times, correct?
Yeah, I was microdosing in the 90s, actually, and I've used LSD hundreds of times. I have to tell you that from my experience, I've only had one experience out of hundreds of LSD experiences that I would say were spiritual. Most of mine I would relate more as mechanical. I used it when I was writing code, writing books, but from a spiritual aspect, I didn't receive that from LSD. But now, to be fair, I never looked for it from LSD because I always had mushrooms and ayahuasca for my spiritual medicine. So I actually used LSD for as a tool, to help my work. So I never approached it from a spiritual aspect. So Matthew, I'm probably not the best guy to ask about that.
Well, thank you for the insight, though.
So anybody else want to chime in here while we're available? No,
I would like to chime in.
Here we go. Here, just Gary and Levi don't have the benefit of video. So Houston coming in now is also on the road. So we have two people driving right now. And go ahead, Houston.
I just parked, so thank goodness. But thank you guys for doing what you do. I think it's really awesome. I also was first exposed to the Iboga House online many, many years ago when it first started. And I was watching their YouTube testimonies. It was really awesome. So I unfortunately have not had the chance to try it, and I am probably going to come check you guys out in the near future, or maybe in the next year or so. But that being said, my question is, do you guys educate yourself on the pharmacology and the pathophysiology of the drug in the brain and so forth to help those people who are there for a psychospiritual journey, maybe to like have a deeper structure or a framework of understanding what's going on? That would be my question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I would love to see you one day.
Yes, definitely.
For myself, no, really, we don't. I mean, I know some of the basics from what I've read online from a lot of the bigger Ibogaine groups and ICEERs and the Ibogaine Alliance. You know, I've taken in that information. But our work with this medicine really comes from the traditional place and really accessing it more to ask questions about life and direction in life and why things are the way they are. And so yeah, no, I don't. Gary maybe might have some input on that.
Nothing's coming to mind right now. So
let me follow that up then with a quick question. So what about a scenario of if Gary is doing his thing, right, and he's talking to people who are there and they're on board with all of your philosophy, Levi, or like the way you're putting it and dealing with emotions and stuff like that. But then you go, well, yeah, this is going to help you in the drug detox situation. Or so you get one of those people that's 2 weeks out, right? And they ask you that question, how is that helping me physically? Like, I would definitely incorporate that knowledge, because that would like make you even more effective as a practitioner, or like whatever you're doing, you know?
Yeah, no, we definitely explain to them that it is gonna reset the brain chemistry, and with the medicine you can definitely feel that happening, especially for the people that have recently detoxed. You can, you know, a lot of people describe it as feeling the medicine in their brain, just scrubbing it clean and scrubbing throughout their body, almost on a cellular level. So we do definitely let them know, like, hey, you know, I should say, yeah, we do let them know that part, like physiologically, you know, things are going to be repaired, and synapses, you know, your serotonin, your adrenal glands, all those things are going to get a kickstart. And that's really one of the reasons people don't stay clean for a long period of time, is they just never get quite fully back to feeling better. So we definitely, you know, guide them with letting them know that, you know, you're going to feel good after this. And yeah, let them, and then they do feel that after they get through, you know, for people that have recently detoxed, you know, like Gary was saying earlier, the medicine needs to go in and cleanse them physically first. So typically, especially for those people that have recently detoxed, the medicine, the first time they have it is going to be a really physical experience. There could be more purging. Their recovery time will probably be longer. But then once they come out of that and they've had that first cleanse with Iboga, typically they recover a lot quicker that second time. And that's generally true for everybody. You know, the first time that the medicine goes through you, the recovery time is a bit longer. Whereas now that things have been cleared out of the way, it doesn't have to clear out the same things that it did the first time. It can dig in a bit deeper. And you know, for some people, for so many, that if they live a clean life and they're you know, they've been working on themselves, sometimes that physical detox may just be you know, 3 or 4 hours or 5 hours. You know, other times it can be the whole, you know, the whole journey, which typically people feel the medicine to some extent, you know, it's going through them for a good 24 hours. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Houston.
No, that's good. That's really good. I was just thinking about also like dosages. Do you guys weigh stuff out for people? Do you give everybody the same amount?
Yeah, so we serve just the ground up root bark, like it came right from the plant. So we serve that off of the spoon. So serving the medicine a lot, you can get a good idea of, we actually go by, half spoon, 3/4, full spoon, just knowing how it affects different people. But then for the TA, we make our own organic total alkaloid extract using only Heinz 57 white vinegar, which is also natural vinegar. And so we do weigh out the total alkaloid extract capsules. So really, you can get a good idea on somebody's tolerance to the medicine, spending some time with them, talking with them, seeing, how strong their mind is, how set they are, and what, whatever they're working on. And so, but we start everybody off with a dose that they can handle. And typically that first dose will be the root bark. And once the medicine's been in them for about an hour, we can get a really good idea of like where they're at, and also getting their input. We definitely trust people that they know themselves better than we do. And so, we get information from them. We can, you can feel their arm, and if it's getting really hot, we know the medicine is still coming up quite a bit. Your people's balance can get off. So depending on, we may help them up and see how their balance is. And depending on how their balance is, we can get a good idea. So then we, for the people that need it, continue dosing throughout the next several hours. For some people, that first spoon of root bark may be all they need to go in and get the work they need done. Other people could need several more doses. So then once we've been through that first ceremony and we know everybody's tolerance, that second ceremony, we can get a really good idea on just how much to give them all at once, rather than kind of staggering the doses over several hours. And that can a lot of times give them a little more lift off. And then also, because you're not staggering the doses, the recovery time can definitely be quicker. Yeah.
Now, as I understand, Levi, these are small groups, 2 to 5 people. Is that right?
Typically 5 to 7.
Oh, okay. So there's a small enough group that you have, you can give some individual time to the participants.
Absolutely. No, that's important for us. Yeah. The medicine lasts so long, the care that's needed the next day, all through the night. Yeah. It's just not, fit for large groups. And so, we want everybody to get plenty of attention and plenty of time to, work with the medicine, work with us. We've been through a lot of the same things that many of the guests have been through between Gary and myself and the rest of the staff. So there's a lot of things we can relate to that we've been through ourselves, and guide them on, how we've learned from the medicine. So it's important for us to have smaller groups.
I've heard you mention this, or Gary, and I've heard this from a lot of people that are involved or have used Iboga. And you talk about a 24-hour trip. What are we really talking about as far as intensity, and what do you mean by a 24-hour trip?
So when you first take the medicine, there's going to be several hours of a ramp up time, similar, to other plant medicines. There's the ramp up and, the peak time. So what happens with Iboga is, you think of it like a graph going up, and it goes up relatively quick. And then that taper downward goes very, very slow. So typically by the morning time, so we have everybody in the ceremony area until sunrise the next day. And when we get them up to go to their room, typically people, it's not as intense as it was, 3 or 4 hours ago or so. Definitely still feeling the medicine quite a bit, and they, just want to spend some time alone, and have some introspective time. And so, but they'll, some people will have visions throughout that next morning, and or insights coming to them still, and really feel the medicine strongly. Other people bounce back a bit quicker and, get up and have lunch and take a swim in the pool. So yeah, it's really, really individual. And what we tell people is really the medicine's gonna work on you until it's done. And then once it's done, that's when you'll go to sleep. And so once a person gets some sleep, once they get, 3-4 hours of sleep, they wake up the next day feeling really fresh, just really clear, like whatever, things that were being carried around have been released. And so, people probably get tired of us asking here at the center, did you sleep? How'd you sleep? How many hours you get? We're very, very interested in people's sleep, because we know once they do get some of that sleep that, things are going to start looking really good for them soon. And, so the medicine, whatever we're dealing with, if a person comes in dealing with anger, or they're really anxious or really hard on themselves, that next day, that can really come up. So, we constantly remind people that, if people are feeling a bit sad or anxious or, angry, whatever they're dealing with, typically that amplifies those emotions in them. So we constantly remind them that that's the healing happening, and that's just how it works. Like Gary will say, whatever we let in, whatever we're dealing with came through the front door and has to leave through the front door as well. And so, there can be a period of some really, it can be difficult. It's definitely a sacrifice to do this work, but, the gains and what people get out of it are just life changing. And
I can really see that, and like I say, I've had friends who it has changed their lives. But a question I have is, and this is probably beyond the reach and scope of what you guys can do, but my question is, I know I had a few ayahuasca experiences that a week, 2 weeks, several weeks later, I really was still having some problems with it. And so I could call somebody else from my group that, we'd been together for years, and talk about it. These people, when they're there for a week, 10 days, they have a couple intense experiences. But when they go back home, is there any way for them to get any kind of support should they need some reinforcement later on?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So there's, we're available once we've had this medicine with a group. This really connects you on a deep level, even though it is only a week long that we're together. But there's a connection there from there. So They know they can get in touch with us whenever we want. Of course, if all of them did that, it would be tough to manage everybody. But people do reach out. And we also have bi-monthly integration calls for any past clients that have been here to Iboga Wellness. So they're able to jump on those calls. Peter, who's our house manager, and has done a lot of work on himself, including coaching in the past, leads those calls. And, it's just an open forum for people to express what they're dealing with and, reconnect back with us and the lessons they got from the medicine. And then we also work with a couple specific groups and people. One is one of the more talented coaches I've ever come across, and from Australia, and he's been here, so people can work with him. We work with a place called Being True to You, which deals specifically with people integrating and preparing for plant medicine. Another one called Afterplant. Another client of ours recently started something called Ibo Coach to help people. So we definitely have a good 4 or 5 resources for people if they need some intense one-on-one integration help. And we definitely stress that, because after Iboga, things are going to be released, but life's still happening. And so, that's the time to really integrate the changes in is this first month, 2, 3, 6 months. What we tell people is to really make this the year of them and really focus on them for this 1 year and, look back and just see how their life has changed. And so those first months are extremely important. So we definitely, pushed them in the right direction with working with some of those coaches and getting on our own bi-monthly integration calls.
Well, that's really wonderful. I mean, your answer blows me away because it's so much more than I'd expected. And you don't find that kind of care in every place you go. And so I really admire you guys for the work that you're doing, and you obviously care about the results because it's when you're working with people's lives, everyone is equally important, and the fact that you recognize that and deal with them, I applaud.
Thank you.
Hey, Levi, I do have one question. I hear it's taxing on your heart, or is there any issues with people who have high blood pressure with taking it?
So yeah, that's good point. Everybody needs to get an EKG done, either before they come or with a doctor here in Costa Rica. And so, yeah, we definitely don't want anybody coming that has some heart issue that they're not aware of. But with that said, no, unless it's really high blood pressure, they're most likely fine. If it was a borderline case, we would definitely get with a doctor on it. But through all the years that we've been doing this, less than a handful of people have not been able to come due to some sort of heart issue. And so, yeah, we do the EKGs, and we've had some younger people come with their parents that were struggling with depression, and we've had we've had a 77 or so year old come. So it's the medicine is very safe if somebody hasn't been abusing their body with drugs for a real long time. And so, yeah, with the EKG and, they do a medical questionnaire, then, we, feel very confident, administering the medicine. If we did feel it was dangerous at all, definitely wouldn't do this work, and definitely would let somebody know, like, hey, I don't think this is the right thing for you.
Is there any legal issues with the Costa Rican government in you doing this work down there?
So it's an unclassified thing. There's other Costa Rica becoming a known spot for different plant medicines. So from our viewpoint, they definitely they like Costa Rica being known as a healing spot where people can go get in touch with themselves and nature. And so they're very accommodating.
What about people who are taking other prescription medicines beforehand? I know in our ayahuasca circle, we always required that they stop taking SSRIs, things like that, for 2 weeks ahead of time or so. What's the situation with Iboga and prescription medicines that people may be taking already?
Yeah, good question. That's an important one. Yeah, same with Iboga. People have to be off any SSRIs for at least a couple weeks before coming. And surprisingly, probably about, anywhere from 40-50% of the people that come have recently stopped some sort of prescription medication. So yeah, definitely no SSRIs. And what else? We don't accept people that are on benzodiazepines as well. That's one of the things that Iboga won't help a person with is benzodiazepines. So if people come, we confirm that they're not doing those. Now, some of the Ibogaine clinics may accept them, but we just know that the Iboga is going to strip the benzos out of their system, but it's not going to help with the withdrawal. And so when people, benzo withdrawal can be dangerous, and it's a very long process. I mean, like months long to fully get it out of your system. So those are two big ones. Definitely people that are getting off any SSRIs definitely have, some light at the end of the tunnel to look forward to, because, like like we mentioned, they're going to physically feel good without having to have any prescription medication in their body, mentally, physically. And, and those things can do a number on the receptors as well for them. So, people, they finally make the decision like, hey, I'm going to stop this and I'm going to use this tool. And, that's what's great about Iboga is once it works through and gets that, brings their brain chemistry back to baseline, can be the first time they've really felt good in, years for a lot of them.
I just have a real quick question. So I have a friend who's been struggling with opiates for quite a few years. And one thing that they have asked about the Ibogaine and the Iboga is it true that it really, comparatively to a cold turkey opiate withdrawal, that there really is some help with that? I mean, comparatively to a cold turkey withdrawal, I mean, how hard is the withdrawal going to be for someone who's been an opiate quite a few years?
Yeah, the time that they've been doing the opiates can extend the detox time, but yeah, no, it's night and day, man. At least 80% of the withdrawal symptoms are going to go away. For a lot of people, it'll be 90 or even 95%, depending on what they are, withdrawing from. A lot of the, maintenance drugs like Suboxone and Methadone can really be tough ones to get out of the system, which are surprisingly the hardest ones to stop somebody from using. Whereas if somebody, say, is using heroin, that gets out a lot quicker and leaves a lot more freely. But yeah, no, that's the scariest thing for an addict is the withdrawal process. If you've never been through it, you can't really imagine how horrible it is. And so it really does work. And it is the only thing on the planet that works with the physical withdrawal symptoms. They're still not going to sleep for a while. That one's there, but at least they're not there writhing in bed and shaking and, sneezing and, pooping and what, all the other symptoms that come with that. But yeah, no, it does really work.
Right on. Thank you. One other question is something that was mentioned earlier. You guys talked about potential of ancestral healing. Do you guys have people that come for that? And what does that look like? And I guess what would they be healing on an ancestral level with Iboga?
Yeah, you want to take that one, Gary?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Good question. The way I've come to understand is that our families pass on from one generation to the other, a lot of what's going on in their own experience. And sometimes during a lifetime, someone can make some mistakes, and those things get passed on to the next generation. I've seen evidence myself that's convinced me anyway that that healing does go back, and it is possible to make some headway for your ancestors by resolving some of the things that they didn't. It's hard to really quantify it too much because it's so individual, but a lot of sexual abuse. There's one of the things that really struck me when I started doing this work is just how much sexual abuse goes on, and that's the kind of thing that can affect our ancestors as well. If there was some sexual abuse in the past, that wasn't really resolved before a person passed on, then there is a possibility for their ancestors, their children, their grandchildren to address those things and create healing. It actually happened to me myself. I guess that kind of got me to aware of that kind of thing was going on. In my own case, I was sexually abused at a very young age, but I didn't know about it. I didn't know what happened. I just knew something happened, and I really couldn't understand it. During my Iboga journey, I was able to connect with my grandmother, my mother's mother, and when I first saw her, she was quite unhappy, and because I had just talked with my mother was ecstatic, and talked to my grandmother, and she was not happy. And I asked her, what was wrong? And she said, because of the abuse that went on with my second husband and you. And it was really very revealing to me, and I could see how that had really affected me, and I just wasn't aware of it at all. But then, later on, as we were talking, like she was definitely happier that she got to tell me about it, and then I got to understand what had happened to me. And I remember I asked her, Grandma, why did that have to happen to me? Why did I have to be abused? And what she told me was that I wouldn't be who I am without it.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's really interesting, the story you just told. It really clarifies some things for me about dealing with ancestors and how the healing can come forward. And it also, that story also reveals to me why it's important for people like all of you at your center to honor the tradition of Bwiti shamanism and their healing practices, because traditional Western medicine that just uses ibogaine would be very difficult to tease out something that like you were just talking about. But with the traditional ceremonies, like I'm familiar with the ayahuasca, I can definitely see how that's quite important. So Gary and Levi, we're about out of time here, but if one of you would kind of tell us, because I'm going to put this in a podcast, if somebody is interested in beginning a conversation with either of you or somebody at your center and explore the possibility of them coming down there, how do they get this whole process started?
So they would just submit we have an 800 number on our site for USA and Canada. If they're, in another country, they can submit a contact form, and we can call them on their mobile phone in whatever country, or info@ibogawellness.com. And we send a complete retreat overview with all the details of what's going on. And there's a medical questionnaire in there that would be the first thing to start the process. And we want to make sure people are also ready for this medicine. That's our key. We want to work with people that really want to work on themselves. And so, we definitely look for that. I would say, Gary was saying with the will of wanting better things for yourself, we've definitely had through the years a couple of people come through that, more psychedelic pioneers looking to try the next thing. And, the medicine doesn't seem to get along with that too well. It really wants your, it wants you to do your part. And so those people have had a really rough time. But if you are looking for guidance and, you're willing to do the work, I haven't found a more valuable tool. But you can call or email or on our website, and, no pressure, no stress. And, we're happy to talk with anybody that's interested in Iboga.
Well, I want to compliment all of you for that. In particular, I've talked with quite a few people who have different kind of healing centers, and the internet is sort of kind of hands off, and it's hard to get a hold of real people sometimes. by putting an 800 number up there and actually talking to prospects, I applaud that. I think that is fantastic, and it certainly should give your potential participants a good feeling that they can talk to a real human and explain their situation and get some feedback other than just through email.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's definitely what we find.
Well, listen, I again, I appreciate your time for being with us tonight. This will be out in our podcast next Monday, and I hope that it will find some people who can really use your help, because I think you guys are doing important work, and I really want to do what I can to help. So thank you for being here tonight, and the same with our rest of our fellow saloners here. Thank you for being here, and until next week, keep the old faith and stay high.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Everyone. Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Lorenzo.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to the Psychedelic Salon, where people are changing their lives one thought at a time.
I hope that this conversation was as enlightening for you as it was for me. Now, if you've been with us here in the salon for a while, you already know that I don't have any personal experience with Iboga or with Ibogaine, unlike most of the other psychoactives that we talk about here in the salon. So much of this information is new to me, and hopefully it's also something that you're interested in learning more about, because I plan on inviting more Iboga practitioners to join our conversations in the future. In fact, in a few weeks, the producer of the new movie Dosed will also be joining us for a live Monday night salon. And speaking of future live salons, tonight our guest will be Dr. Mike Sapiro, who, I'm told, is a former Buddhist monk turned meditation teacher and psychedelic coach. And if all goes according to plan, a recording of tonight's conversation with Dr. Mike will be next week's podcast from here in the salon. And a week from tonight, my guest will be Daniel McQueen, who will talk to us about his new protocol for extending a DMT experience significantly longer than what is experienced by smoking it. And the following week, on July 22nd, our guest will be author and longtime friend of the salon, Eric Davis. And I'm in the process of lining up other interesting guests for our future live salons as well. And hopefully I'll see you there one night. But for now, this is Lorenzo signing off from Cyberdelic Space. Be well, my friends.